So I'm happy to introduce Tugce Karatas. She's currently a PhD fellow in technologies for cultural heritage. That's a doctoral program at Torino University. So it's great to be really international here. And she's focusing on an interdisciplinary approach to cultural heritage through design, curation, and digital sciences. And your PhD is ongoing in computer science. Tugce has a background in design and just been trained at the Escola Superior de Artes e Design in Porto. And she's also has a degree from Kingston University, which is in London. I'm really looking forward to your talk, and you have the floor.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here because it's absolutely interdisciplinary environment that I was missing in the computer science department in Torino. Just to add a couple of things about my background and my approach, that this approach to digital data creation, it came to during the PhD without knowing that also the digital humanities field existed. So I accidentally also digital humanist without knowing what does it mean. So today I will talk about specifically in archaeology, but I think it's also important for us to understand, like during these 2 days, we were talking about digital curation and then workflows, and also some managemental issues about these workflows of the digital technologies when it comes to the implementing into the projects. So just to briefly explain what is digital curation, I think yesterday we were also getting insights that managing the data from the creation until the end of its life cycle, like disposal or without until it's not being used anymore. So this kind of approach is, this term actually came into the awareness less than 20 years ago. So the term coined in 2010. So it's a relatively new term for the field. But it is also a type of approach that enables the data in its longest accessibility, preservation, and integration. So why it's important and why did I choose? It's also something that is bridging the gaps between the practices, as also in my field, design, curation, and digital technologies, but also different disciplines. So when you are dealing with the different data formats and the repositories, the institutions, obviously you need the framework, and digital curation is actually a good approach to bridge that gap. In a different manner, I think I started from a case study. So we were having a project in Japan. So this project was a project of the European Union sponsored, and it was in a different culture, but also from a different technical approach than the only culture. So this archaeological site in Okayama, we were working with the archaeometrists and then archaeologists, zoologists. So there are like transdisciplinary fields and specialists, heritage specialists, but also different institutions in Japan, Belgium, Greece, Italy, and Portugal. So the project is actually still going on, but our task was to build a shared database, a centralized database, and use this, the results and the excavation diaries and all this information until the exhibition. So creating a centralized database for the scientists, but also seeing the results in two different exhibitions in Japan and Italy. So for this problem, or for this, let's say, project, there were actually no frameworks. So when we search to implement different disciplines and different languages, as we mentioned during these 2 days, different softwares, tools, there was also misunderstanding between the disciplines, but also so many softwares that use the same data and gives you the results that you don't have this kind of like black box that you don't understand how the results are getting. So these kind of problems, my research question was, can we create a framework to implement this workflow to get all this data from beginning until the end, and also get all these parts, all these scientists involved in the process. So Archaeo is, as I said, so it used different scientific tools, but also different the templates and different data sets. So, for example, we have 3 different, conceptually, we have 3 different domains in our hand. That one is the archaeological side, the other one is the finding the object itself, but also there are small fragments that we also would like to connect these fragments to understand which part they are coming from and how it's related to the general, let's say, the museums or the general collections of the other institutions or other countries. So in this sense, we simplified this model. So we were also studying the different frameworks and also try to understand this digitalization and standardization tools. And we started, so this model, digital data curation model, is also can be used in other projects, but to specifically relate to the archaeology, we start with the data acquisition or creation. And there are also like the 6 steps on this model. So it starts with the data acquisition or creation. So it also combines the domains that you can choose. So it can be an archaeological site or museum collection or just one object digitally. So it is specifically on the data itself. It's not something that's physical, but we are talking about the data creation in this sense, and it has these outputs and inputs. So to understand the processes, we also look for the text or the JPEG or what kind of data you are producing at the end of this process. So that, for example, data processing and modeling, we have the point clouds, and it goes later the knowledge graphs, or we have the database Excel sheets. So on the circle ones are the main steps. And then the archive and repository and the publications or websites are usually the outcomes of the projects. So just to exemplify the process with the Archaeo project, so we have, for example, a fragment that we don't know what is it or where is it coming from. So we have this excavation, and then later in the lab there are a lot of analysis happening, and then after this analysis, for example, this cross section, there's a JPEG is filled with lots of data, but it's not interpreted at the moment. So we have to process this JPEG, and then to understand the components of the elements, to understand which ancient phase is coming from, or is it related to another fragment in the same area, or in the other collection, or in the other object of any kind of museum collection. So for that matter, we were lucky to have this workflow from the beginning of the projects, because usually, let's say, the big archaeological projects are just getting all this data excavation, and then later dealing with the big data. And after, it's really hard to structure all this data. So we have this example of Çatalhöyük in Turkey, and then Pompeii in Napoli. So there, it was, I think, the nice solution to conceptualize entire database in the beginning with the scientists to understand what are they entering in this database, and also kind of involving all this process that they don't really have the technological background, let's say, and they don't want to get involved. So they want everything to be put in the database, which is not actually useful in some cases. So in that matter, we have via Archeo database, and also we use OMKS software. It's a web-based software to integrate all this data, and then give them this structure to get access to the website, and then enter their findings. So this is a bit the conceptual mapping, which is not really, yeah, I know it was really hard, just to admit a little bit that it was really hard to also approach the, let's say, archaeologists or different disciplines to, of course, I'm not understanding every part of it, and it's unfair to expect them to understand all these fields and all these relations, but also it was hard for getting all this data entered in the database. So in the archaeology or the design projects, we usually, let's say, build the space and they will come, but in the digital repositories, they never, like, there's a threshold that we never pass this threshold. So it was really hard to get the data from the scientists, but we had this catalog record based on the Italian minister. So this catalog recording, it comes, it's another approach in the recording all this data called ARCO in Italy. So we combine the archaeological knowledge with the archaeometric results, which are two different things, because one is qualitative and the other one is quantitative. But at the end, I can say that it was like this kind of annotation, and it's like the creation of the item. It was relatively easy because of the software that we use, OMKS. So we built the two sites for the Japanese scientists and let's say European scientists, because there was two different approach also to archaeology, but also to language. So this is more or less it's kind of deconstruction of the database for them to understand. So we gave them this controlled vocabulary, so they don't need to do anything. They just need to go and fill the spaces. Again, it didn't happen, but we find out the solution to reach their approach, in a sense that the putting the names and the steps of the digital creation, like acquisition, interpretation, processing, and modeling, and combine them, the tools that you use, and also the different instruments, like optical microscopy and all kind of different things, because they want to see the results. And in this sense, also the other scientists can download the results and then also work on the same let's say, that's the same object. And it's also something that they can change during the process, because sometimes it's like totally wrong after the excavation or in the lab. They get another interpretation, and it's also something corresponds with the reflexive methodology of the archaeology. And at the end, we have this BRKO website. It looks nice. I mean, it has more than 50 stratigraphic units and more than 200 items. And also we can maybe click the thing that we can also see. It's also open to public. So we have back end and front end. It's online now. And you can also see the process and the digital curation steps. You can totally download the results and then see the link between the objects, and then link between the different stratigraphic units and then different objects, and if they are coming from the same area or the same era, as in the collection matters, you can also see this connection. So it's kind of a linked data that we would like to also achieve at the end of the project. And so it's also like from the conceptual part, it also has the records and also different media. So we also integrated IIIF and all kind of new approaches in the archaeology. So it's something also corresponds with the defining this part, which is not very European, but also integrating Japanese data and the vocabularies into this global vocabularies and taxonomies. And just to conclude, I think overall the project is still going on. There were also some delays on the excavations, and for obvious reason. But also it will be nice to see the results in the two exhibitions if we could make, because there are some problems also with taking the objects outside of Japan, because we are also using this site as a kofun is very sacred in their culture. So we are not allowed also like a tiny bit of, let's say, soil we cannot take. So this was really nice also to apply for the digital technologies, like cutting edge digital technologies in archaeology and archaeometry. But also it was challenging to how we will organize the exhibition without having any physical objects. So I'm also curious how it will be at the end. But the database is one outcome that we are very proud, and we would like to continue this kind of approach in the other archaeological projects, or it's more like a digital curation model can be also applied to other fields, other projects, or just to give the backbone in the database creation or the technologies that to implement in the projects, archives, and creation purposes. So I think I will conclude here. I said everything, so I think I'm standing between you and lunch, so I don't want to be in trouble. So I think the last slide I have added to the website, and then my contacts. So if you have more questions, or if you want to visit the BRKO website, you are also totally able to do that. Thank you.